Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you, this time talking episode 20 of Season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. called Scars. And this is where the fallout from Age of Ultron kind of touches on the show. But still, given that the final two episodes are going to be shown together as part of a 2-hour season finale, then this does quite a nice job of queuing that up. So let's just kind of get right into things. First of all, let's just kind of start small. Mac is leaving the team. I don't particularly care. The Age of Ultron stuff. Well, we start off with seeing another guest appearance by Patton Oswalt, and we get a little bit more explanation of how Theta Protocol was Coulson readying the helicarrier from Age of Ultron. I assume that was one of the ones from Captain America Winter Soldier. And basically, kind of beyond that, we get to hear Edward James Olmos in his wonderfully gravelly voice say the word Ultron and yammer a little bit about Tony Stark being irresponsible. But, okay, whatever. Honestly, this was pretty weak in terms of tie-in. But, take what you can get, right? So, after the events of that, though, Real S.H.I.E.L.D. has basically decided to work with Coulson, make him the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just he kind of has to make sure that keep them appraised of things. They're sort of like his cabinet in a way, is how I like to think of it. Given that he, still has those close ties to Maria Hill, to Nick Fury, who, of course, they just only found out was alive, and the fact that Coulson can basically sick the Avengers on them if they don't knock it the hell off, well, yeah, this makes a lot of sense from Real S.H.I.E.L.D.'s point of view. And of course, Coulson is pretty happy about all of this, so he's much more willing to sort of show that he's willing to give this episode. And of course, that leads to the big problem here, ultimately at the end, where he agrees to let Gonzalez go in his place to negotiate with Jiaying, rather than going in himself. And this is a terrible idea for a multitude of reasons. One being that, of course, the Inhumans were expecting Coulson. Even Cal was willing to concede that Coulson cared about Skye. Skye had vouched for Coulson to her mom. And of course, there's the whole thing that Gonzalez is basically one of the people who was saying, like, oh, wow, Skye has powers. We pretty much need to kill her. And then he shows up at the Inhumans place with armed guys, and then he goes into the meeting with Jiaying with a gun, armed with a gun. And then when he starts talking with her, he does make a genuine effort to try and, like, okay, let's try and work things out, showing that he's not an entirely unreasonable person. He gives her that little memento that she was going to give Skye, and he's very genuine there. He is honestly being very sincere. He is doing his best to make this work. And he even tries to sympathize with Jiaying a little bit by saying, like, hey, Hydra hurt me too, which goes over like a lead balloon, considering he got a battle wound that makes him limp, and she got vivisected by a Nazi. So yeah, that doesn't really work so well. And then he has the gall to go in there and talk about how basically he's going to index all of the Inhumans and makes it sound like this is non-negotiable, matter of fact. And again, this is somebody who he's saying this to somebody who suffered at the hands of the Nazis. I mean, yes, it was Hydra, but this was back in the days when Hydra and the Nazis were only just sort of diverging. And that even before he was properly a big shot in Hydra, Whitehall was indeed a Nazi, just like the Red Skull. So yeah, this whole index sounds suspiciously like more than a little bit of like what the Nazis were doing to Jewish people. And Jiaying does make the perfectly valid point that basically amounts to, well, you call it an index now, but if S.H.I.E.L.D. were ever to turn in against the Inhumans, it would basically be the perfect hit list. And, of course, we do have to remember that Jiaying said to Skye, after Skye was taken from her, that she was like Cal. She kind of lost it a little bit, but that she managed to pull herself back. Well, here we get to see what Jiaying was probably like when she was in completely and utterly lost it mode, and it's pretty damn frightening. She murders Gonzalez. She fakes it that he tried to kill her to start a war with S.H.I.E.L.D. She basically gives Cal back his super strong strength and super crazy serum and uses him as a Trojan horse into S.H.I.E.L.D. And this is whole thing here, especially with Gonzalez. Yes, what he did trying to empathize with her, in the whole terms of, we've both been hurt by Hydra. Well, that was poorly thought out, but he was being sincere. But Jiaying really, really seemed to take exception to being pitied by somebody who was only human. And, Gordon really isn't much better. He mocks Cal for not having any real powers, and that, basically he gets his powers through chemistry. So while S.H.I.E.L.D., does seem to be extraordinarily biased against the Inhumans are very biased against ordinary people. The Inhumans think they're better than ordinary humans, while S.H.I.E.L.D. sees the Inhumans as all being pretty much monsters. And there's also the fact that May, like Skye brings up the whole thing in Bahrain and does a nice job of throwing that in May's face. And you gotta love anytime somebody can leave Melinda May dumbstruck. On the point there that her killing that Inhuman kid is a perfect example of why the Inhumans don't want to trust S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, Guy kind of misses the fact that they couldn't properly police their own, no matter what Jiaying says, and not being able to do that is what led to the situation in Bahrain in the first place. So again, this is really nicely done that both of these sides do have legitimate points. But let's see. Let's kind of take things back to a character level. We get a little bit more backstory on Reyna, and we see that, big surprise, her thing is that she's always wants more and more. And this, of course, and her being manipulative and stuff, all leads to the point where when she is genuinely trying to warn the Inhumans about something really terrible with no real ulterior motive, nobody believes her. I mean, she'd been trying to butter up Gordon, was obviously trying to foster some people to back her against Jiaying, and of course they all see right through her. But again, this all just absolutely blows up in her face. Again, we see Coulson make an enormous mistake in turning this whole thing over to Gonzalez. And I love that Hunter and Fitz were immediately like, Coulson, this is a terrible idea. I mean, Hunter even flat out called Gonzalez Captain Ahab, which is a pretty adept comparison given his attitude towards Inhumans. Sorry, I'm a little thrown off today because I was actually literally talking about Herman Melville with one of my coworkers just a few hours ago. But we weren't talking about Moby Dick. We were actually talking about Bartleby the Scrivener, which is one of Melville's lesser-known stories. But anyway, let's see. Nothing else particular to say about Hunter or Fitz there. Yeah, that whole little gadget, the weird melty rock thing, the anti-Inhuman WMD, I don't really recall anything like that being in the comics, so I don't really have anything particular to say about that. Let's see. Yeah, Coulson. Oh, yes, of course. As many people have pointed this out, what in the world is going on at S.H.I.E.L.D. that nobody notices that May is piloting 2 planes? Seriously, what the hell is up with that? How do you not notice that? And of course, it did turn out that those of us who thought that Kara, Agent 33, being left at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base was part of Ward's plan totally turned out to be true. So yeah, now Ward and Agent 33, Kara, have Bobby prisoner, and looks like some torture is in poor Bobby's future. It also looks like her and Hunter getting that spin-off show is, well, there's no looks like, it's been confirmed that ain't happening. Bummer for her, and but oh well. But I don't think they're going to kill her off anytime soon. I mean, in the comics, Mockingbird is an Avenger. They're not going to kill anybody who's an Avenger on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if she is a fairly well, no, it's really kind of unfair to say that Mockingbird is a minor Avenger. She's actually one of the more important people who doesn't really have powers. So, yeah. But yeah. Okay, slow down and make reasonable and good sentences. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about? Nothing to say in particular about Lincoln, but his less than happy attitude about having been indexed does shed a lot of light on how the Inhumans do view S.H.I.E.L.D. Now here we do get to confirmed by Sky that the powered people call themselves Inhumans, and this is one of the things about the Inhumans that has always bothered me. Why do they call themselves the Inhumans? I mean, basically, if you know anything about anthropology, the names that people from cultures around the world have for themselves, like Americans have American for themselves, German people call themselves the Deutsch, Russian people call themselves Rus or whatever, Japanese people say Nihonjin, and all this. Well, as you translate it back and forth, we tend to apply these sort of things to cultural groups or nationalities. But within these groups, like say for example tribes and stuff, the name that these people have for themselves usually tends to translate more as the people. I mean, that's kind of one of those constants across cultures. So the idea that the Inhumans would call themselves Inhumans never really made any sense to me. They'd probably just call themselves something that doesn't just sounds like a random word that was supposed to mean the people. I guess Inhuman may be just more of an English translation of that, like that basically kind of their way of separating like the people who are apart from humanity, the people who are different, the different types of humans. In probably whatever language the ancient Inhumans spoke, this probably worked better. And Inhuman can just be a modern approximation of that. Now, again, this is just me spitballing, but this is, again, like I said, this is one of the things about the Inhumans that just never really made sense to me. But when Stan Lee cooked these guys up back in, I suppose it would have probably been the mid to late 1960s. I think the Inhumans popped up somewhere first around 1960, sometime around 1968, I think it was. Although Medusa had actually been in the comics for a while as an independent character for some time before that. But anyway, I mean, I don't think Stan Lee was putting that much thought into it. I mean, no way. He was just kind of like, hey, Inhumans sounds cool. Let's call this group of people that. So let's see. Anything else that we have to talk about? Nope, actually, that kind of covers everything I had to say. Coulson has massively dropped the ball on this one, and it's about to hit the fan next episode. I am so looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. It's a shame that the tie-in to the Avengers movie couldn't be as strong as it was with Winter Soldier, but, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to have its own thing. Oh, that reminds me. We have recently finally gotten the answer to one of the big questions that people have really been scratching their heads over since season 1. And that's like, well, why don't the Avengers know that Coulson is alive? Well, somebody asked Joss Whedon about that, and he basically said that while he was making Age of Ultron, he kind of treated it like Coulson being alive on the TV show just didn't happen. Basically, in his mind, Coulson was still dead because he thought that Coulson being alive undermined that moment that united the Avengers in the first movie. And now, remember, in season 1, Coulson acknowledged that the Avengers still think he's dead. And, of course, the idea that this is plausible just grows more and more ludicrous with each single Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. season. But I think this is just going to be one of those things we're just kind of have to live with. Sort of like the how the hell does nobody realize that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person? So, yeah, it's kind of bullshit. But, kind of bullshit is par for the course on many a TV show. So we're just going to leave that there. I mean, just sort of look at exactly how realistic CSI is in terms of law enforcement, how forensic science actually works. But that's just an example, and I think we're just going to leave it here. So, guys, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.